Greetings, distinguished guests. I am Rudaba Anadia from the Principality of the Mist. Mundanely, I am a Chinese-American woman living in the Bay Area. I do this to humanize Chinese people, and because exposure takes away fear, storytelling connects people and helps build familiarity. With all that, welcome to a poetic study of Chinese. There are 6 vowels and 5 tones in Chinese. These tones will be marked by the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 in my following romanization. It is generally called pinyin, but a lot of it I typed myself, so it might not be standard. So these 2 vowels are special because V is actually written as U with 2 dots over it. Therefore, when following these consonants, it is generally written as U, except for L and N. Going over the tones, the first one goes oo, 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 and oo, whereas the second one is ü, 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 and ü. Poetry was an important part of the imperial examinations in ancient through Renaissance China, where people would have to write poetry to reflect their cultural upbringing so that they would fit into court. Today, we will be mostly covering the Tang and Song dynasty. The Tang dynasty rose from 618 to 906 and was contemporaneous with the Vikings. The Song dynasty was from 960 to 1279 and was contemporaneous with the Crusades. The 4 classic Chinese novels are Journey to the West, Water Margin, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and Dream of the Red Chamber. They are in Chinese known as 西游记, 水浒传, 三国演义, and 红楼梦. The following 2 poems are based on the Water Margin. It is also known as Outlaws of the Marsh because its main setting is a marsh and its main heroes are outlaws. It was set in the late Song dynasty with much of the country under non-Chinese rule, just like Chinese Americans are today. The first poem is from the prologue and is an original summary of the prologue. Plague in land, pity the people, keep heaven's mandate, merciful king, lighten taxes, take off chains, eat no meat, entreat wise men, scale mountains, face scary wild beasts, bring healing to all, holy acts bring life. Water Margin was written from the Taoist point of view, and sages in Taoism are known as Xianren. The first character, Xian, sometimes is translated as fairy. And it comes from the fact that they were people living in the mountains. The first character, if you turn it slightly to the left, looks like a person. And the second character looks like the mountains. Also, vegetarianism is a good way to avoid zoonotic diseases because you're not raising as many animals and getting in touch with so many of them. The second poem is a boast from the viewpoint of one of the heroes, Li Kui. I should say one of the anti-heroes, because he was most well known for killing a lot of things. Cross channels, son of wood, sooty spiral, wind of dragon, brother Bester, bold bandit, wealth winning, tiger slaying, what of Wusong, fame to me, tiger terror, 4 chopped cats, swift steel flashing, mothers mourned, generating grief till vengeance come. On mount of monarchs, strong of arm, heaven-sent hero, vicious of soul, cruel chief, restless in raids, fetching friends, accidental allies, Liangshan leader, wild Li Kui, Han hut flutterer, spreading fear, blood rust bovine, The Killing Star. Li Kui was one of the outlaws living on Liangshan in the Chinese classic water margin, written in the late Song Dynasty under Mongol rule. He had two nicknames, Iron Ox and Black Whirlwind. He joined the Liangshan men after Wusong, first encountering the group while they were staging a jailbreak. When he went to retrieve his mother so that she could live a better life than just being supported by his honest minimum wage earning brother, she was killed by tigers. This caused him to kill the entire family of 4 tigers with his axes. While he was celebrated by the village, it was a pretty mean thing to do to the tigers that was just trying to stop being hungry. It was later revealed in the story that he was a fallen star, specifically the Killing Star. His name is written as such. This is the given name Kui, which means crossroads or waterways, hence cross channels. And this is the family name, Li, which is often described when somebody says the Chinese equivalent of how do you spell your name as Wood Sun Li, hence son of wood. As we talked about, his brother was super poor, so he felt that he was better than his brother. But being a pretty arrogant bandit chieftain, he also felt that he was better than all the other people in that brotherhood of bandits. Mount of Monarchs refers to Mount Liang. This is the same Liang as Liangshanpo of the butterfly lovers, and it was originally named after the Prince of Liang, son of the 5th emperor of the Han Dynasty. However, since this is a boast, Monarchs refers to how the bandit leaders lived like kings. Both references of Liang would have been known in the Song Dynasty. So here you see fluttering and Han because of that Liang, the prince, as well as the famous guy from the butterfly lovers. And finally, one of his nicknames, but translated, but thesaurus for alliteration purposes. On the other hand, Journey to the West was written in the Ming Dynasty. Because the native people had just kicked out the Mongol Yuan Dynasty, there was a renaissance of forms popular in the Tang Dynasty, such as Lu Shi or regulated verse, generally having 8 lines. Both my examples have 5 syllables per line, although there were many cases of 7-syllable lines as well. Lu Shi rhyme on the even lines. Which is more harmonious than Chinese quatrains, which we will cover later. Mountain top still rock, out pops Fey monkey, east fertile farmland, west future decree, south lovely spices, north leave its cold flea, shocked and angered gods, laser eyes will see. 花果山故事，蹦出妖精头，东看美食园，西望往那走，南瞧温婉家，北见雨寒豆，猴眼射金光，大闹天宫楼。In the Chinese classic Journey to the West, there was once an ancient weathered rock on the mountain of flowers and fruits. After many years of stillness, it one day hatched a monkey. This is and was super weird, because monkeys do not usually come from rocks. That's not how biology works. The monkey had good manners, so bowed to the 4 cardinal directions. which in Chinese are east, west, south, and north. This activated golden light shining from his eyes, which is translated by some as lasers for the awesomeness factor. After becoming the Monkey King, he would one day wreck heaven itself, until the Buddha sent him on the journey to the west. So in Chinese, you have mountain of flowers and fruit, old rock, but it was also a lonely rock, which happens to be homonymic because 孤石 means lonely rock. Another homonym of that is 故事 because it was a story. Leaps out Fey monkey. But Yao Jing is also homonymic to Yao Jing. Or semi-homonymic, because one has a slightly different ending, Yao Jing versus Yao Jin. So usually these in Chinese communications means that it is important, but also in the story, the monkey was a servant of a monk who read sutras so that his circlet would give him headaches so that he would actually listen rather than dashing off and killing everything, because it is a Buddhist story and Buddhists do not kill. Looking to the east, beautiful gardens of food. However, this is also homonymic to Mei Shi Yun, because as a Buddhist monk, it is expected of him to go around begging for food, and therefore he doesn't have any money. Si Wang is looking to the west, but also homonymic to hope, which is, well, hopefully you can walk there peacefully, because it is super far from China into India, but it is even harder when you have to fight demons. But it's an adventure book, so, and no dice. And therefore, Nanqiao, Wan Nanjia, looking to the south, warm homes, but also homonymic to Nanqiao of hard to look at. Because when you're busy fighting things, you're probably sleeping on the road. Also in southern China, there is the tale of the scholar who lived in the city while his wife lived outside of the city because rents were super high. And so she would bring him noodles every day until one day he became one of the top ranking scholars, and those noodles became famous in that region called Guilin, which is to the west of Canton, and also therefore known as Guangxi. Looking to the east and fighting the cold. However, in the SCA, we usually use swords to fight. And Jian is homonymic to Jian, which means sword. The rest are pretty much what is on the paper. And so we look at this next one by the founder of the Lingnan School of Poetry, Zhang Jiuling. It is entitled Wang Yue Huayue, looking at the moon and thinking of far away. 海上生明月，天涯共此时。情人怨遥夜，竟夕起相思。灭烛怜光满，披衣觉露滋。不堪盈手争，还寝梦佳期。 This piece reads to me as if there was an intentional twist at the end, because the whole piece is complaining about not being able to sleep, and then the poet finally falls asleep at the end. This is further evidenced by the poets growing up in Canton, where the end sounds are even more strikingly different. For example, here you have shi, shi, zhi, and qi, which at least romanization-wise all end in I. But in Cantonese, you have C, C, G, and K. K totally does not sound like it rhymes. Any questions at the moment? Otherwise, we shall move on to the couplets. From 8 lines to 2 lines. Unlike couplets in English, which rhyme, Chinese couplets are more like sentence parallels. For example, looking at the English one, you have locative, subject, a sending forth of or starting, and then a thing. We start first with a poem from the Yuan dynasty, from 1279 to 1368, under Mongol rule. This was written by Zhao Mengfu. 春风浪苑3000客，明月扬州第一楼. Although the characters here say up and down, Chinese couplets are generally on either side of a door. So it breaks down as such, setting up the scene of either in spring or under the moon. Langyuan and Yangzhou are 2 places, and there's a number with a thing. Yi and San being 1 and 3 respectively. So this can be read as in praise of restaurants. Langyuan, often in poetry, means fairyland, and is sometimes attributed to where the queen mother of the West, Simu Nyangning, lives. And lo has 2 different meanings, one being floor and one being building. So one can read it as, in the spring, there was a heavenly place, possibly in actual Langyuan, with a lot of people or doing a really good business. And tonight in Yangzhou, I had a really good dinner because this restaurant is awesome. However, Langyuan, the place itself, is situated near Sichuan. It is generally considered the gardens of Langzhong, which is close to Chongqing, and both Chongqing, which is close by Langyuan, and Yangzhou were strongholds against the Mongols back when there was still a stronghold against them. In Chinese culture, there is a mooncake approximately every late August, and people used to send rebellion messages to each other inside the cake so that the Mongols wouldn't find out, because, who would suspect the poor innocent? A delicious cake, delicious cake. And that's how in the spring, let's gather in these two places with a lot of people on the first floor under the moon. But then you gotta wonder, what's the rest of the context? The first floor of which freaking building? Couplets are also used a lot in folk writings for Chinese New Year. Usually we have a Christmas wreath on our doors, but in Chinese, you have a piece of calligraphy, a piece of calligraphy, and a piece of calligraphy. And this part tells you whether you're supposed to read the left or the right first. Because if it goes this way, you read this one first. If it goes this way, you read this one first. So the title for this one is 万事如意, meaning luck in everything. 一年好运随春到, 四季彩云滚滚来. A year's fortune comes with the spring, 4 seasons of rosy skies upon us. It gets divided up like so. One year and 4 seasons. Good fortune and rosy skies comes with the spring and comes like the waves. Second one, 四季兴隆, being the title, which means 4 seasons flourishing. 事事如意大吉祥, 家家顺心永安康. By character recognition, you can kind of see that the first 2 characters match each other because it's a repeated character. So everything versus every household. According to your mind versus according to your heart, and great prosperity or great fortune. Well, if you're forever peaceful and healthy, then definitely it's super great fortune. Everything in accordance brings great luck. Everyone keep calm and healthy. Another practice is Lantern riddles. Often at the end of the 15-day Chinese New Year period, or during the 15th of the 8th lunar month, which is the Mooncake Festival. Often there would be lanterns with riddles on them. So the first one, 日月才一次. And the second one, this behold in your mind's eye, moon and sun before you spy, concept in a riddle word. Come on, pray tell, what say I? Well, if the moon and the sun were right in front of your eyes, ow, that's too bright. One of them go behind you or something. Go halfway around the world, please. You're not supposed to be in the sun at the same, you're not supposed to be in the sky at the same time. So in Chinese, this is the word for earth or dirt. And so if you put a cover over it, 盖土 'cai zi, an A and an O, roof, above, below. Spotted in street speech. Don't come blank me, bro. Well, there you have at, of course. Chinese quatrains rhyme on the first, second, and fourth lines, with a turn in the third line similar to how haiku have a turn in the second and somewhere between the second and third lines. It's because during the Tang Dynasty, a lot of culture from China got imported into Japan, but they shrunk the poem down. Generally, there are 5 to 7 syllables or characters in the per line. And given that Japanese is still 575, that doesn't seem to shorten quite as much. But they use more tones per word. So it probably also got shortened in its meaning and content as well. Let's take a look at this poem that I wrote on the departure of my shoemaking friend who enjoys fancy dress and really likes to drink. They're a fair youth with great height, wine in hand lit by lamplight. The frame is by leather bound. The title, Green River Night. Well, dude, but then frame? So not actually dude. 乔孔雀，光未灭，那画面清江夜. Okay, peacock, but then, oh, it's a painting? And not an actual bird. The line length is the same as the Song Dynasty trimetric classic, San Tzu Jing, an excerpt of which is in this handout. It also took inspiration from Zheng Wanglun and Hua, which are these 2 poems right here. Today, we shall look at Li Bai, one of the greatest poets of the Tang Dynasty. He was known as the god of wine because whenever he drank, he wrote stuff. Zheng Wanglun, this is the era, the Tang Dynasty, and the author. 李白乘舟将欲行，忽闻岸上踏歌声。桃花潭水深千尺，不及汪伦赠我情。I, Li Bai, was setting out on a journey by river, when suddenly I heard footsteps and song on the shore. The waters of Peach Flower Pool are 1,000 feet deep, yet deeper still are the feelings of Wang Lun for me. The peach flowers here bring to mind the peach garden, which is property of the Queen Mother of the West, and bring immortality. That's why peaches are super prized in Chinese culture. And being representative of immortality, it might have meant that they promised to be best friends forever. Song is generally gift or sending of a gift. However, while the sentiment behind a gift is always an important part, you can't actually box up your feelings and give it to someone. Therefore, it actually, in this case, means the sending off of your guest. For example, back in days where there were fewer cars, you might walk your guest to a few paces down the street or just to your home's main door. A similar thing was found in 16th century Italy, where they discussed how many rooms from the main hall to walk the guests out. There it was by rank, and in China, it was somewhat by rank, but also by familiarity, because sending your guest off is an excellent time to have a private conversation with them, rather than letting them come to your party and then hanging out in general and not having any one-on-one connection time with them. Skipping through Hua, which I have a adaptive translation of that you can take a look at later. We come to the most famous poem of Chinese, 静夜思 by Li Bai. 床前明月光，疑是地上霜。举头望明月，低头思故乡。 Looking at the moon and thinking that the moonlight on the ground looks like frost. Looking up, you see the moon. Looking down, thinking of home. Often it is thought that Li Bai wrote this by his bedside, because nowadays, 床 means bed. However, it is broken up into wood, well, into large in area and wood. And anciently, it meant various things. It could have been a well or a well fence. It is also homonymic with window, and it's pretty easy to look up at the sky through a window. A lot harder through a wall. It could also have meant folding chair. Ancient Chinese wells were made out of wood. So you have wood, and being big helps with drawing water. The fence around those wells was called silver bed due to its similar shape, but being made out of metal. Much as over in Europe, sleep is called nature's second forest. In China, it is a deep well of dreams. It is also used as wordplay on windows, having similar sounds. On a modern keyboard, you even type it out using the same letters. Chuang versus Chuang. Within the book of songs, Shi Jing, there is the line 在妹之床, which means bed for sleep, showing that at minimum, there were different types of chuang. Finally, if one takes a camp bed with supports and a canvas over it and shrinks it down, it becomes a folding chair. There's a term in ancient Chinese, Hu Chuang, which means folding chair. And that was often just shortened to Chuang. This is the character for Hu. It is a blanket term for peoples to the north and west of China. For example, luobo is turnip or daikon, but hu luobo means carrot because it originated in Central Asia. As it is close to Chinese New Year, I bring you a piece by Wang Wei. After all, he was a pretty notable poet of the Tang Dynasty. I've heard the following Poetic adaptive translation quite a few times and have the permission to share it. The poem originally is actually about Chongyang Festival, where family gathers together and goes mountain climbing. 独在异乡为异客，每逢佳节倍思亲。遥知兄弟登高处，遍插茱萸少一人。 It doesn't seem to rhyme at all in Chinese. However, when you refer to Cantonese, which is sometimes known as Tang language by Cantonese speakers, due to its similarity to Tang era Chinese, you get 獨在異鄉為異客，每逢佳節倍思親。遙知兄弟登高處，遍插茱萸少一人。So 親 and 人 rhyme. And the adaptive translation, kept indoors, not free to roam, hard with exile's pain is stung, kinfolk tossing salad high, though I've sushi lackey sung, is about how COVID keeps people from traveling. Yisang is a Cantonese raw fish salad enjoyed by peoples of the southern Chinese diaspora. It comes from the words yu, sheng, which is literally raw fish. However, in Japanese, sashimi, which is the raw fish without the rice that you find on sushi, is written as 刺身, 刺 being pierce, or in this case stung, and 身 being body, but the heart is a part of the body. Lyrical poetry flourished in the southern and also northern Song dynasties. So basically the entire period. Unfortunately, much of the original music it was written to is lost. I call it lyrical poetry because 歌词 literally means song lyrics. It is further supported by the fact that the title of many of Li Qingjiao's poems, like 如梦令, are written with the first phrase appended. So this, for example, would be 如梦令长 长记溪亭日暮. Li Qingjiao was a prolific poetess who wrote about the detailed personal experience, and I adapted her poem for when teaching the class at SCA, universities, and collegia. 长记溪亭日暮, 沉醉不知归路, 兴尽晚回舟, 误入藕花深处, 争渡争渡, 惊起一滩鸥鹭. So often remembering the pavilion by the stream at sunset, deeply drunk and don't know how to get home. When excitement has reached its pinnacle, taking the last boat home, accidentally getting into a patch of lotus, fighting your way out, you accidentally frighten a bunch of birds into the air. Here, it's actually more about egrets. Zui literally means drunk, but can also be deeply absorbed in, like in the zone, for example. And 真度 is a false homonym with how do, because 真 is similar to 真, as in this one. And do, well, doing stuff. So as a Chinese American, I felt that was kind of funny to think of it as 真do. How do you get out of the lotus bank when your ship is completely stuck? Translated as summoned by dreams. Memories unearthed in maze of mirror. Hearken till late, heavenly Osmanthus. Persevere to preserve in pelican shadow. Lee clan daughters of different worlds. Because I had Pristine's help with writing this. So here, maze corresponding to not knowing how to get back. And one is literally night, corresponding to late. Osmanthus takes quite a bit of a journey, because if you have the original ohua, you take away the o and you add a gui instead. That becomes guihua, which is osmanthus. And then if you add a yue in front of it, that becomes laurel. But moon osmanthus didn't quite sound right in my ears. So it got translated as heavenly osmanthus because the moon is a heavenly body. I liked the repeated sounds, and it's repeated down here. And egrets, pelicans, birds, tweet, tweet. For this following piece, the traditional tune has fortunately survived and is attributed to the Sung Dynasty general Yue Fei. Yue Fei was brought up to serve his country with utmost loyalty, but was eventually forced out of court due to political intrigue. I'll read it once in Chinese and then sing it so that you have somewhat of an idea of how the tones of the language translate over to the music. 怒发冲冠，凭栏处，潇潇雨歇。抬望眼，仰天长啸，壮怀激烈。30功名尘与土，8000里路云和月。莫等闲，白了少年头，空悲切。靖康耻，犹未雪，臣子恨，何时灭？驾长车，踏破贺兰山雀。壮志饥餐胡虏肉。笑谈渴饮匈奴血，待从头收拾九山河，朝天阙。怒发冲冠，凭栏处，潇潇雨歇。抬望眼，仰天长啸，壮怀激烈。30功名尘与土，8000里路云和月。莫等闲，白了少年头，空悲切。靖康耻，犹未雪，臣子恨，何时灭？驾长车，踏破贺兰山雀。壮志饥餐胡虏肉，笑谈渴饮匈奴血。待从头收拾九山河，朝天阙。A translation adapted to the current climate due to the anti-Asian sentiment, which was probably originally anti-Chinese, but unfortunately spilled over to the Japanese, the Koreans, probably the Thai, Laos, and Cambodian, Thai, Lao, and Cambodians as well, because it's hard to tell somebody's ethnicity when you're not remotely close to their own. Is as follows. Rage is rising in my breast, angering mind, unbidden, clamorous cries in our defense. Though known for a gentle heart, prejudice bids me to fight. What tongue can hold against assault this intense? Excluded, blamed for ills, heritage undermined, labored land, we broke, mountains immense, rulers rarely are the folk, Tea and dumplings bring delight. This will lead to better times or incense? As a woman, I am keenly aware of the China doll syndrome. To combat it, I often cover up quite a lot, except for when I am out with my Chinese husband. This is to counter the desexualization of Chinese men, because they are actually pretty hot. Since we have time, I'll share with you this piece of art. Without a word for all together now, I'll sing the chorus, toast the past future, being harmony. The topic for this collaboration, with the title of A Semi-Repeatable Chorus, was Together at Home. Home is written as Jia in Chinese, which forms the main body of the text as a framing shape for the script. For the top part of that character, it is called a bao gaito, approximately translated as treasury covering top. Treasure covering top. Bao being the character for treasure. The central character of that is Jade. Since I had at top that I wish to allude to Jade by, I outlined it in green and colored it with blue and purple, because those are the colors that nephrite jade is found in. Nephrite jade was the predominant Chinese jade in period, since Xinjiang is a lot closer to China than Burma is, where jadeite comes from. The last word in the poem is harmony, which in Chinese is he. However, harmony he is a homonym to box he, which is why I chose to box it in. And thank you. That comes to the end of the recording.